This wasn't just a talk show. It was a moment when two friends, whose names had become synonymous with cinematic greatness, came together to reminisce about their iconic roles, from The Godfather to Heat, from Raging Bull to Scent of a Woman. But tonight, they weren't here just for nostalgia. Al and Robert announced the creation of their charitable foundation, New Frame, aimed at supporting young actors by providing scholarships, masterclasses, and opportunities for debuts. Bobby and I have come a long way, Al said, his voice growing more serious but still warm. And we want new talents to have the chance we once fought for. Robert nodded, adding with his signature brevity, "Yeah, and to avoid making our mistakes." The audience's laughter filled the studio once more. The conversation quickly turned to their shared memories. Al, as always, was the driving force of the discussion, his hands flailing in the air as he recalled the filming of The Godfather. "Remember, Bobby, how Francis Ford Coppola made us do 20 takes for one scene? I thought I was going to eat that damn camera." Robert, leaning back in his chair, flashed his trademark half-smile. "Yeah, but you loved it, Al. You were like a volcano on set. I was just trying not to forget my lines." The audience erupted in laughter, and the camera operators filming the show could barely contain their own smiles as they focused on these two legends. They moved on to Heat, the film that became iconic not just for their performances, but for the legendary diner scene where their characters, Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna, met face-to-face for the first time. "It was like a chess game," Robert said, his voice deepening as he recalled the moment. "Al and I were sitting there, and Michael Mann just said, 'Do what you want. Just don't kill each other.'" Al roared with laughter, slamming his hand on the table. "Oh, yeah. I remember how you looked at me, Bobby, like I was really a criminal you wanted to lock up. I thought, damn, he's going to arrest me right here on set." The room exploded with laughter again, and Robert just shook his head, though his eyes sparkled with amusement. Al leaned closer to Robert, his voice softening as if sharing a secret. "You know, there's one story I've always wanted to tell about Heat. About the day you and I decided to improvise a scene, and everything went completely off the rails." The audience fell silent, sensing something special was coming. Robert raised an eyebrow, his face a mix of curiosity and mild wariness. "Oh no, Al, you're talking about the moment we almost broke the prop?" he asked, his voice, though reserved, carrying a hint of mischief. Al broke into a grin that promised a story worthy of their legacy. "Exactly, Bobby. And I want everyone to hear how you, the great Robert De Niro, became the hero of the day. Or maybe the anti-hero." The room erupted in laughter, and the cameras zoomed in, capturing every gesture. Al raised his hand, as if inviting the audience to dive into the story with them, and began. Al Pacino, with his signature theatrical gestures, leaned back in his chair, holding the audience in suspense. His eyes gleamed with anticipation as he prepared to share a story that, by all indications, was set to be the highlight of the evening. Robert De Niro, sitting across from him, crossed his arms, his face a blend of skepticism and barely concealed amusement. "All right, Al, go ahead and tell it," he said, with his characteristic dry irony. "But if you exaggerate again, I'll dispute every word." The room burst into laughter, and the cameras zoomed in, capturing this moment of friendly chemistry that made them so unique. "So it was on the set of Heat," Al began, his voice filling the studio with warmth and nostalgia. "Bobby and I were preparing for one of those intense scenes where our characters, Neil and Vincent, exchange looks filled with both hatred and respect. Michael Mann, our director, was obsessed with details. He wanted everything to look perfect, the lighting, the angles, even how we held our coffee cups. But Bobby and I, we love to improvise. And that day, we decided to add a little chaos." Al paused, glancing at Robert, who was already shaking his head as if he knew where this was going. "Remember that prop table in the diner?" Al continued, addressing Robert. "It was wobbly, like it had been glued together 5 minutes before shooting. We're sitting there, playing the scene, and I, to add some drama, decided to slam my fist on the table. I mean, I'm Michael Corleone. I can't just sit still." The audience laughed, and Robert rolled his eyes, though his smile betrayed his enjoyment. "And what happened?" Al went on, his voice growing louder with excitement. The table wobbled, my coffee cup flew to the floor, and Bobby, instead of continuing the scene, just looked at me like I'd ruined his best take. Robert, unable to hold back, burst into laughter, a rare moment when his reserve gave way to genuine amusement. Al, you forgot the best part, he interjected, his voice calm but with a playful edge. You didn't just spill the coffee. You shouted, "Damn, that's real coffee," because you thought the prop guys had given you the real stuff. It was just cold water with food coloring. The room roared with laughter, and Al, grabbing his head, let out a theatrical groan. Oh, Bobby, you had to bring that up. I thought I'd ruined the scene, but you saved the moment. Tell them how you did it. Robert, with a mock sigh of reluctance, leaned forward. All right, fine. We're in the middle of the scene, coffee's everywhere. Al looks like he just lost an Oscar, and Michael Mann behind the camera is probably planning how to fire us. I thought, if we stop now, the whole mood's gone, so I just kept going. I looked at Al and delivered my line, but I added, "You're always so careless, Neil," right to his character's face. And Al, oh, he jumped right in. He shot back something like, "And you're always so damn meticulous, Vincent." And we just kept going like nothing happened. The audience erupted in applause, feeling how this improvisation brought the legendary scene to life. Al, beaming with pride, pointed at Robert. That's why I love working with this guy. He's like a rock. I can cause chaos and Bobby always knows how to fix it. And you know what? That improvisation made it into the final cut. Michael was thrilled, even though he nearly kicked us out for that table. The audience's laughter mixed with applause, and the camera operators, smiling themselves, captured close-ups of their faces. Al, full of energy, and Robert, whose reserved smile said more than words. The conversation smoothly shifted to deeper reflections. Al, calming down after the burst of laughter, grew more serious. You know, Bobby, you and I have been in so many films that we've become part of people's lives. I still get letters from fans saying Scent of a Woman or The Godfather changed them. And I think it's not just about us. It's about how we manage to convey something real. Robert nodded, his eyes turning thoughtful. Yeah, Al, I get letters about Taxi Driver or Raging Bull. And I always think, we weren't just playing roles. We were trying to understand the people we portrayed, their pain, their dreams. And maybe that's what will outlive us. The moment of silence that followed, as the two actors locked eyes, was so profound that the audience fell still. The cameras captured Al giving Robert a slight nod, as if affirming their shared mission. That's why we created New Frame, Al said, his voice gaining strength again. We want young actors to have a chance to tell their stories, because cinema isn't just entertainment. It's a way to understand the world, Robert added with his signature brevity. And we want them to know, don't give up, even if you spill coffee on set. The room erupted in laughter, but this time it carried gratitude for the wisdom these two shared. They continued recalling other moments from their careers. Al shared a funny story from the set of Scent of a Woman, when, preparing for his role as the blind Frank Slade, he accidentally crashed into a prop wall during rehearsal. I thought the producers would fire me, but they just assigned me a bodyguard to make sure I didn't break my nose. Robert, in turn, recounted a story from Raging Bull, when, having gained weight for the role of Jake LaMotta, he nearly got stuck in the trailer door. Martin Scorsese laughed for 10 minutes straight, Robert said, his voice warm with affection. But you know, Al, those moments, they make us human. And I think that's what people love about our films. The evening's climax came when Al suggested telling another story. This time, not funny but heartfelt. It was after filming Heat, he began, his voice quieter but filled with emotion. Bobby and I were sitting in the dressing room, both exhausted but happy, and I said to him, Bobby, we just did something special. I can feel it. And he, as always, just nodded and said, Yeah, Al. But the important thing is we did it together. Al paused, his eyes glistening with the memory. And in that moment, I realized it's not just about the movies. It's about friendship, about supporting each other, even when the cameras are off. Robert, who had maintained his reserve until then, leaned forward, his voice soft but sincere. Al's right. We're different, but we've always understood each other. And I think that's what we want to pass on to young actors. Find people who believe in you, and hold on to them. The audience erupted in applause, tears glistening in many eyes. This wasn't just a conversation between two stars. It was a passing of the torch, a lesson for anyone dreaming big. Al and Robert wrapped up the talk by addressing the audience. Bobby and I aren't young anymore, Al said with a smile, but we believe in those just starting out. Our foundation, New Frame, is our way of saying, we're with you. Believe in yourselves, take risks, improvise. And maybe one day you'll spill coffee on your own set, Robert added, winking. Just make sure it's not real coffee. The room roared with laughter and applause that didn't stop for several minutes. As the cameras turned off and Al and Robert said goodbye to the audience, the studio still buzzed with emotion. Social media exploded with posts under hashtags Yak Pacino de Niro and Yal Legends Inspire. Fans shared clips of their stories, and young actors wrote about how Al and Robert's words inspired them to keep going. Within hours of the show, the New Frame Foundation's website received thousands of visits, and donations began pouring in from around the world. One Twitter user wrote, "Pacino and De Niro aren't just legends. They reminded us why we love cinema and why we should help others." The post garnered tens of thousands of likes. Backstage, Al and Robert exchanged a glance. "Not bad for a couple of old guys, huh?" Al said, clapping Robert on the shoulder. Robert just flashed his signature half-smile. "Yeah, Al, but next time you're buying the coffee." They laughed, their warm, genuine laughter serving as the final note of an evening that went down in history as one of cinema's most heartfelt conversations. Their foundation, New Frame, became a beacon for young talent, and their conversation a reminder that true legacy isn't just the roles you play, but the people you inspire. Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, two friends, two titans, left behind not only iconic films but hope for a new generation dreaming of their first frame.